One, two, three, four.
One, two, one, two, 1, 2. You're listening to the Online Time Fame podcast. I'm your host, JD, and the name of this show is The Runaway Success of Charleston White. The Runaway Success of Charleston White. That's what this episode is. And if anybody's been listening and they know the phenomenon of Charleston White, because let me first say that we always talk about how there's three factors in what we observe in life. Small minds focus on people. Average minds focus on and talk about. The first one is talk about as well. Average minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. So we would say talk about and then find solutions for those ideas, because it has to be action behind it. Because a lot of people get high, smoke some smoke and sit back and pontificate about ideas of the world, and what should be and could be done. That doesn't solve the problems that we face. The problem is solution minded. What is the solution? What should be done? And that's where there's a lack of that right now. But the point is, with Charleston White, it's a phenomenon, not the individual. Because we're talking about Charleston White, the individual, and he explained this is Charleston White, who is a character, an entertainment entity. So, in being that it's a character, it's not the individual, because most people with the podcast world and mainstream media, one of the biggest topics is gossip, news, and I'm talking about entertainment news and what people are doing. What individuals is doing. That's very popular. That's what people want to talk about. If you ain't talking about nothing real low scale, it's going to be boring. People come to listen to podcasts for many reasons, many informational reasons, entertainment reasons. So, sometimes people don't want to hear all that deep talk. They don't want to go deep like that and to know, the problems of the world. How many times we going to hear it? We know what it is. So when Charleston White came on the scene, his presence became that of an entity, of not just an event, but an idea, because it was a way to transcend, where he showed everybody, all right, you don't have to just be limited to so-called social media platforms. That's the main takeaway that we can get from what he did. Him moving from receiving a check every month from some sponsor or some type of pay system on the social media platform, on to moving to comedy. So now he's doing comedy shows all over the country. He's being booked on appearances. Interview appearances are high paying, but then even off social media, period, he's able to do the comedy show. So that's the runaway success, because he's mocked a few people back and forth in joking fashion, but talking about how, man, y'all been on the internet for 5 years, 4 years successfully. I'm talking about people who are on, online. They on certain particular social media platforms that we know about, and they get they getting a little revenue check every month. And I say little, but it might be a big check. But they're under the terms and conditions of those particular platforms, because what if they get cut off? What if that platform says, I'm going to suspend you for this violation or that violation, and it's no longer free speech, it's no longer free expression, and it's no longer a business entity that has independent decision-making power. Their decisions all have to coincide, all have to be like what's being done on social media platform based on their rules. So that's why Charleston White, he got rejected so many times from the social media platform, suspended, account just deleted. He did another thing. He stopped striking people who used his content. He just did an interview recently where he talked about how he lets them rock. If they want to do a reactionary critique, he lets them do it. So that makes his platform not the individual anymore, but part of the algorithm, so to speak, part of the trend of what the internet is doing. He became that. So once he became that, the message spread. So what was the message? The message with Charleston White was entertainment is entertainment, but it also can start including intelligence, because so much of what we had right now is beef and going back and forth on a low scale. When Charleston White burst out on the scene and was saying, man, forget these gangbangers, they ain't about nothing. How many people of a so-called gang members' victims look like him? Most of their victims are so-called black folk. So-called hard-working black folk are under the, what would you say, what do they call it in militaristic terms? The, what do they call that when someone is under siege? Under siege, and like a police state within their own communities by these so-called criminals. In the past, Charleston talked about this, and anybody who got family from back in the day, older people, uncles, parents, grandparents, they know crime was never supposed to be done in the neighborhood. So-called black folk, if they did crime and went outside the neighborhood and did crime and came back with the spoils of that crime, they were celebrated. And there's a story that it was either a speech from Malcolm X, or it was in his book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, where he talked about he was at a popular restaurant uptown in Harlem, and there was an old time thief. He used to go downtown to the where the money was at, and he would creep in certain businesses and diamond stores and whatnot, and he would just hit for big money and come back in the streets, and that was respect. Because he was known, the rule was, I get mine from the other side. After 1982, brothers started destroying and destructing their own communities, and then wanting to get respect for that. They come back from the penitentiary 20 years later, and they sit down in an interview about how they was banging or representing, and every victim they talk about looked like them. So where is the value in that so-called gang member? Yeah, they got lessons and they got knowledge away from jail. They didn't start studying the Quran. They know some Islam now from the penitentiary. They might have took a community college course. They read a book finally, because they couldn't read when they were children, because everybody know that the so-called black child, the male especially, his reading levels is way below what the national averages are supposed to be. So he wasn't reading. Parents used to sit all the little kids in a room and say, y'all watch this TV and don't bother nobody, and the parents would go back in the other room and do whatever they was doing, and there was neglect from the house. Kid came to school, he was so far behind. In order to help this kid move forward, the whole classroom gonna be behind. That's who these gang members are. Neglected children. So they don't get no hero respect. They should get pity and sympathy, not respect. Sympathy. But the reason they get sympathy is the so-called black folk community, the black people community, the black person community is a community of bullying and hating. That's where you get the term player haters. 99% of who you see out here in these streets and entertainment today, they player haters, because the players superseded everything these so-called gang members and rappers do. The rapper, as Charleston talked about it. See, when we say Charleston, now, because his force has risen so high, his earning power, now he's a force that can lead the people in terms of credibility. Because the first thing people do, if somebody ain't known, they ain't got a certain amount of followers, they ain't got a certain amount of motion. Oh no, he ain't nothing. Look at him. He only got 4 people listening. He only got this, and all of that can be manipulated, controlled through marketing. All these companies market in the name of black people, but it ain't black. It's behind the scenes, and these are the token brothers and sisters, so-called, not even brothers and sisters, males and females, that's put in the place of the so-called black people, and they put in the place of spokesmen and representatives. And then they represent and they say, well, I know how to talk and help generate margins from the black dollar. And they go in the meeting room talking like that. But then when they come out that meeting room, yo, what's up, y'all? Hey, everybody, it's just keeping it raw with me. Nah, they two different people. It's that token in that back, in that meeting room, that boardroom for them people writing that check. You go online, you see these dudes in the meeting rooms. And if you think you seeing something on camera, no. You got to see the meeting that ain't on tape, there's a meeting where they say no cameras. And that's when them brothers is people, persons, traders. And that's a business trader. I ain't even saying they traders to the people, because they never was down for the people, because they never was nobody, ever. They wasn't street dudes. And if they were street, throwing a brick through a window make you a street dude? Robbing somebody who looked like you make you a street dude? They was always stupid, ignorant, buffoonish. See, people got the word coon wrong. If you say something against so-called black folk, they saying that's a coon, where everybody can be held up to standards of what's right, what's true, what's factual. So when you talk about Ferris University, that's in Big Rapids, Michigan, they have the largest Jim Crow museum in the world. They show all the caricatures. They show all of the imagery, the negative imagery that was made against so-called black folk. And I don't say that as a derogatory way to disrespect Caucasians. I say it in a way that's a history that was gone through. And in that history, a lot of people are still those coonish people. You think a coon is the one who's speaking against black folk. Yeah, but you don't even see what that dude is speaking against through his actions are being shown when he comes out that meeting with those people. And he agrees to play the moves they play, because you ain't seen none of them talking about what we see Charleston White saying. What did he say? We talked about it on some other episodes. But we talked about Charleston White when they tried to put him under pressure. When they put him under pressure behind the deletion of Charlie Kirk, and Charleston said, "White people, I ain't your problem. Your problem is the Chinese. Your problem is the Russians. Your problem ain't me, white people." So that brought everything back down to playing race politics. Race politics is you're the bad guy, you're wearing black. He's the good guy, he's wearing white. Even though he may be wrong, he's right because he's white. That's the Western narrative. When you talk about the good guy, the good cowboy, and the bad cowboy, the villain and the good one. And that's a narrative in literature as well. So the point is, when Charleston came and hit him with the knowledge, like, no, the whole point is so-called black Americans, American descendants of slavery. See, when we say slavery and slaves is two different things. Slavery is an institution that was sanctioned by the USA in order to make it the country that it became. Sometimes things got to get bad in order for it to turn good. So we don't say that in a way of guilt and resentment. It's something that we built from the soil, our forefathers and our people, and we still build, because we still the best that do it. The people you see getting the chances and the opportunities at the corporate level, now we all know they be in them hot, sweaty, greasy parties with a bunch of dudes. We all know that now. We knew it when we was always going around. They look at you and they say, nah, he might not go for what we doing in secret. See, all these women's better go get checked and wash themselves and cleanse and rinse off that dirt that was on them, if you know what we're talking about. So what we're saying is, Charleston White is now the entity, no longer the person. The person is the everyday back and forth, and especially the internet loves the lowbrow conversation. It's just like high school, 6th grade, 4th grade. Yeah, you did this and he did that. The back and forth. That's the only way they can get views. They don't have the multi-level knowledge to be able to change the conversation and the direction of the conversation. They don't have it. That's what's happening with Charleston White. When put under pressure, he said, well, what about the United Nations and the so-called American descendant of slavery, where the world court has acknowledged the so-called black man's plight, and all so-called black folk got to do is stand up. Now, name another leader that says that articulately. They ain't even brought it up, period. But that was the issue, because when one looks at the two other times, the two original times, adding in when Malcolm X said it, but he didn't get to do it because he got assassinated. The other two times it was brought up, it was heard. So these black folk who tap dance and run around like they so-called leaders and can't figure it out, if it's their job to figure it out, why is a comedian the one who had to say? This is the only issue. All this talking about white folk and what they do wrong and what they did. What's the real solution? None of these folk can't figure it out. None of these people can't figure it out. They talking. Man, we don't got to hear all that. Folks out here trying to make sure they can make groceries, get their children to school, get their automobile fixed, have enough for these rises, these periodical raises in bus fare, and strive to just make it on a basic level where people who didn't hit a lick and they got a few extra dollars, they bickering and going back and forth talking about something that ain't nothing because they trying to make it too, but they got more than everybody else got to get a chance and to get a shot. They got that. They can say, well, I could take off for 8 months. They'll be back working again too because they workers. They ain't leaders and they ain't builders. See, we ain't going to go 100%. Because we could, but not just for this. We're not going to go there yet. But let us just give a little drop, a few jewels, just to make it relevant for why we're speaking here today. Because this is the Online Time Fame podcast. See, it's Online Time Fame. Charleston White jumped through and got to the online times. Not traditional, because the traditional times was NBC, ABC, and CBS. That's the main tradition. There were other major channels. You know, we came to the place where we got cable networks and whatnot after the 1980s. From the early 80s, or really way beyond that. There was isolated pockets where they did have certain cable networks and people were wired for cable. But overall, cable became a phenomenon in, let's say, 1988. By 1990, the inner cities started getting wired for cable. Suburban people already had cable, depending on what city and state it was. But naturally, by 1993, the whole U.S. may have, not even that. We got to say 1998, because some places in Brooklyn wasn't even wired yet. Even in 95, it was still like it was on its way, depending on what neighborhoods and where it was. And that's nationally, but like I said, some people had it. So the point is, when we came to the digital media, that was different. The origins of email. See, all of this is supposed to be for people, for the betterment of the nation. But people, again, they took these digital media platforms, because this is important. Digital media wasn't even for celebrities. Celebrities already had mainstream media. They had radio, if they was musicians, and if they wanted to do talk shows and interviews. They had television, mainstream television networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. They had all of the talk shows. They didn't pay celebrities to come on to talk shows. That was the place they got to promote their new projects. If they had a new movie coming out, that's where they went to promote it. If they had a book, if they had anything they did, they'd say, you watch it, go back and watch any old The Tonight Show episode or any show like that. You'll see the individual, and sometimes they'll say, so what you got going on? And some of the celebrities, once they're successful enough, and they just say, hey man, I'm not even promoting anything. I just came to hang out with you, but most of the time, you'll hear someone when they have to do their press run and they have to go to all these different networks so they can promote by the way, they'll say, I got an upcoming movie they'll be releasing next week. And then sometimes the show will be in with it and they'll help promote it. And they'll say, well, yeah, we have a clip. Matter of fact, let us show a clip from your new movie. And that was all prearranged anyway. So that's what mainstream media did. That's how it was all the way to the 1990s. Through the late 90s into the 2000s. So when social media came up and they started having platforms, that was regular people, because regular people didn't have the network. When you look at the origins of Facebook, that was for college students. All these platforms, when you look at the early email was a way for university scholars, professors, and different researchers to communicate wirelessly. They had it wasn't wireless, but it was through digital means. They had internet was really academic in nature at first. It wasn't a common everybody thing. First, it was at the college level. Then it was the university level. Then it became where people had access to digital communication through email, alternative form of communication. Put it like that. So that's where that came from. So then the flood of entertainers getting online, they just hear in a commercial sense, because the internet, digital technology, it was uncensored and it was more realistic. Now it's back fake, just like TV is censored, is regulated by the FCC. And while the FCC isn't regulating digital technology, it is being regulated through the corporations and through the clauses they have in the contracts that they're under, where they can't talk about certain subject matter. See, that's what that is. It's called the morality clauses and different behavior clauses that's in most of these entertainers' contracts when they're under management by certain companies. So they're just on there with like mediocre filler, and they talking. And then, as you said, now it's sad that you got hip hop that used to be the revolutionary music, the people's voices from the street. It didn't have to be conscious, but it was aware. It was real reality. Reality rap became known as gangster rap, but reality just meant all I'm doing is telling my story of what I see every day when I'm outside. So the point is, when Charleston White starts dropping knowledge about research he has done and actual activism, that's why he couldn't be canceled. Because most of these people, they ain't never did nothing. They can't point to 25 people they have put on in positions where they have new careers in their career. They don't have 5 MCs that they put on. And it ain't all about just putting somebody in what you do. They haven't even been job leads, and they don't have it. Everybody ain't got the ability to build. They just employees like everybody else. But the point is, now that monetary opportunities are scarce, now they come into the internet looking for a way to get economics, where they had the red carpet. They had the velvet rope where we couldn't go into the entertainers realm. We had to be on the outside looking in. Now the entertainers came to the people's realm, which was the internet. The internet was it was almost like a public utility. It was just something that was at cost. It was very inexpensive, and everybody was there. If celebrities start seeing, oh, what's that internet thing? And the nature of them always thinking they supposed to be something and get something that they didn't work for. Here they come. And then they shift the whole narrative and make it commercialized instead of authentic and real. So that's why you see some celebrities, they have to scriptedly have to say something real, because as they hear what's coming on the street, they got to jump on the next thing coming in the street so they can be a part of it. So that's what we see today. But as far as the breakthrough knowledge that's going to change the focus of how the people see the world, you ain't getting that. That's why as they put that pressure on Charleston White, he dropped a few jewels that you ain't going to hear from none of your bought and paid off celebrities. So that's why he showed he wasn't talking to people who were listening. He was talking to the powers that be, who control the game, who control all of the entities that we see that we think are doing so well, the people behind them. The ones, the puppet masters of these so-called celebrities in the inner city. See, that's what that was. So we say that to say, Charleston White mentioned on multiple occasions that he had worked with the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. I think that's Arizona State University, if I'm correct. And he has said how he appeared on the cover of the American Bar Association journal. Now, how many people in the street, that's not going to ring no bell of significance. But when he mentions that, see, once he goes into that mode, everything is different. But he's talking through people, and he's talking to some other people. Now, anybody listening, because we have it in the inner city where we laugh at a dude who went to school. Oh, man, he a nerd. He's square. He talking white. See, that's ignorance, and that's what was cultivated through the 1980s. We need these dudes to be stupid, so they've been cultivated to be stupid. That's why everything you see, the people who get to talk to presidents and certain leaders, they're stupid, especially now. At least they used to just be under contract to play the game. Now they got authentically dumb people who are so-called celebrities. They ain't talented. Somebody's writing their lyrics behind the scenes. They're like playing a role because that's the dumbed downness that they want people to be, so things can happen the way they had happened. See, and don't get me wrong, there are some smart people who are just playing dumb. That's what they used to call a sellout. They ain't stupid, but they play dumb on TV because that's the direction that they want the common people to be. See, but we have an open so-called culture. People can read books and educate themselves, but they teach that's not the thing. That ain't cool. So when Charleston White broke back onto the scene and he's talking education and he's talking about activism for children and bringing up youth, that's the foundation why he can't be stopped. Because anybody can go flip that switch and go ignorant. Yeah, dog, what y'all on? And throw a bunch of, curse words and be negative. That's just so-called, that's N-word culture. See, so they can go to that. The funny thing is, the gang member, the drug dealer, all of them ain't supposed to be revered. We know who they are in the street, and we know them in the street, so we can respect them as we see them in the street. But they not part of mainstream media. They ain't supposed to be part of the internet either. I asked a gangster, I asked an Italian dude. I said, hey man, how come so many of them crime dudes is online? He said they ain't got no pensions. They never had no job. So these dudes ain't got no retirement fund. They retirement age and never did nothing of legitimate significance. That we can name 3 institutions that may either have positive or negative sanctions. A sanction is like a punishment. So most so-called inner city, so-called black folk, Negroes, they deal with negative sanctions, something being taken or removed. The number one ideal in the community, boosted through all the prison movies and all the street movies, that's a negative sanction. Prison. A positive sanction, military. Another positive sanction, education, college, university system. But what are they all? They are institutions. So the so-called black man is pointed toward the institution of prison, where the working class common man is pointed toward military service, and then you have another that's still the common man pointed toward education. So the education and military are the positive sanctions of society, where prison is the sanction of negativity and punishment. So the so-called Negro, he upholds the punishment side. He don't want to hear nothing smart. He ain't gonna read a book till he go to the penitentiary, because he was neglected his whole life. So when Charleston White is talking about, yeah man, you dudes, y'all was pushed in the corner, y'all little kids get over there and drink this Kool-Aid and watch TV and be quiet. That's all they got. They didn't get no education with their parents reading to them at night, and Charleston go in on them in character. Now that Charleston then came to this point where he is now, where he's transcended the internet and show actual intelligence, because it takes intelligence to be able to talk on different realms. Everybody can talk ghetto. We can talk so ghetto it can't even be on this channel right here. We can talk so street because that's where we be. We've been to that level already, but one has to be educated and trained in order to talk on those other levels, academically, intellectually. See, that's where they can't go. So that's why in the inner city, because they're trapped in mentally, the ghetto is the mind for inner city people. That's why they say you trying to talk white, because they're trapped into their own ignorance, that wall of ignorance that they was brought up on for external and internal reasons, environmental and physiological, so to speak. So that's the nature versus nurture argument of society. That's the movie Trading Places, Nature versus Nurture, where they took Eddie Murphy in that movie out the street, put him in a career in a better household to see if he changed. And he, so that's a whole argument. So these dudes came from nothing. That's why when they see the so-called drug dude, they don't know that dude like that, because there's a difference between powder and crack. So, but anyway, the point is this. When you look at the 1996 double album, All Eyes on Me, from Tupac Shakur, he had that song called Only God Can Judge Me. And Pac rhymed, he said, and they say it's the white man I should fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here. I can't lie, ain't no love for the other side. Jealousy inside makes them wish I died. So he's talking about a lot of things, but the complexity of that right there. Brothers is the ones who gonna come get you, but they always blaming the so-called white man. Nah, man, he ain't the gangbanger. He ain't the one talking about the set all day. They should be ashamed saying that in public, but what else can they say? Brothers ain't got no pension or retirement. They got them felonies. Say they can only get a minimum wage job. Grit it out, dig deep, and go and work at that grocery store. The same place we was working when we seen them dudes getting a few dollars for about 8 months before they caught that case and was gone. See, they don't have the fortitude because it's coming from the broken, dysfunctional family structure of the neighborhood itself. So that's why they don't got nothing in their mind. So we are broken people, because America's a broken place. Even those who look like they haven't cash got issues. So let me fast forward right quick to something a little bigger. A funny story is how, when you really think about it, hold 1 second. When you really think about it, and you really look at the United States for what it is, right? For what it is, and not just for what it is, but what it's supposed to be. It's something. It's something else. So let's go one place other than where we were. If you go back to 1987, go back, do some research. There was a group, a phenomenal, legendary group by the name of Stetsasonic out of Brooklyn, New York. Stetsasonic had a song featuring the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and it had Baba Tunde Olatunji. He was Nigerian, drum player. He was on the song playing drums and congos, and he's world famous jazz folk musician. He passed away, R.I.P. to him, but he's world known. And the song was called AFRICA, 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 Tommy Boy Records, 1987. All royalties were donated to the Africa Fund, and this is United States dudes. So United States dudes been carrying the world for decades, for more, longer than you can explain. That's a whole nother conversation. See, so which of these dudes is really doing anything for the people nowadays but fattening their pocket while the ignorant commoner is sitting back, yo, you know what I'm saying? Son, billionaire. Can you tell? No, because you ain't seen nothing come back your way and do nothing for your children, for your nieces, for your nephew, for your neighborhood. You ain't seen it. You ain't seen it. You think wealthy people don't develop their communities and build private schools for them? These Negroes who you think are entertainers are not anything more than something lower. They ain't just entertainers. They're plants put to disrupt because they're broken, coming from a broken place. They wasn't never meant to do nothing significant because their jobs are nothing. They ain't nothing but puppets and so-called clowns. The people we look at are not who we think they are. Absolutely not. Not in no kind of way. The so-called celebrity.
Comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader.
So we already know that. We play that speech from 1963, not because it's Malcolm X to be repetitive, because we played it more than one time, but as an educational tool to show Malcolm X was a street dude, came from the street, was regular, became street, so at least as an activist, he was able to speak from a street perspective. But these dudes are supposedly street, they ain't educated. And when we talk educated, we ain't talking about college. We talking about they haven't read enough books. They haven't educated themselves. That's what made Tupac dangerous, because he was wide read. Now you got some brothers that read, but they still dumb because they dumb through their actions. They ain't doing nothing. You got entertainers that's supposedly Muslims and they drinking liquor, performing during Ramadan on videos with naked women. So the world is laughing. Oh, they do that in America? They stupid. Not to say it ain't freedom of expression, but they got Muslims all in the video, on a liquor, on a cognac commercial on the subway. And ain't this dude Muslim? This dude, ain't he gambling? Ain't he investing in casinos? But they front man anyway. They don't own that stuff. See, when we ain't gonna go into that of who, what. See, that's one problem that Malcolm X had. He used to call names, and that was a mistake, because folk who don't research don't need to know. Don't be talking. See, that's what we said. There's 3 points that should be spoken about. People, small minds talk about people. Events, average minds talk about events. And greatness, Great minds talk about ideas, but then they implement and create solutions. These ain't solution-minded people, because from the rise of where we saw China come to from 1980, from the 80s till now, the U.S. is in they dust. Ain't doing nothing. Ain't doing nothing for the regular people. The wealthy getting wealthier. They balling out till they falling out. But the everyday man, prices, this is something about prices if you really want to know. And this is comedy. This is funny. This is funny, man. When you go in the grocery store, look at the price of what you bought. Because if you ain't got that much cash, you're going to definitely look at the price, because you got to look to see if you got enough to get what you want to get. You're going to look. But do one thing. When you come back to that store 2 days later, you ain't got enough to buy groceries for 2 weeks straight and don't show up. You be back tomorrow like it's a damn corner neighborhood store. That's how much you got to come to the store, because you got to wait till you get some more cash. Or I got $14 more. I can go get something else. Or now I got that other paper. I can go get the other ingredient for that meal we was about to eat. Don't nobody with economics deal with those types of complexities of poverty. And you could just be working class. Working class folk is doing that. And the celebrity can buy what he eating because he eating high off the hog as that house Negro for those who own the company. Now, we ain't blaming it like we jealous. We saying he ain't got the fortitude and the intellectual capacity to make big moves where everybody eat. He ain't got it. He can just serve those who running stuff, and they ain't running it good, because now the Caucasians is starting to say, I ain't got it. So all these dudes and other podcasts, these basketball players that do podcasts, they don't even understand. Once they was in the 9th grade, these basketball players was tall by the time they was in the 6th grade. In the 6th grade, most basketball players was abnormally tall for their so-called age. So everybody kind of knew this dude might be something in a sport and athlete capacity. So I'm going to start being nice to him. So this dude, now you do have a select few athletes who are actually smart. But most of them was so big, we knew, oh, he going to be an athlete. I'm going to be cool with him just in case he make it to the pro. So he never got true critical analysis coming in his direction. He never got criticized. That's why when they get paper, the first thing they got is 5 different baby mamas by 5 low-scale females. Say it like that. 5 low-scale, 2 baby here, baby there. They just loose with the jewels, with no self-control and no self-discipline. If ain't nobody standing over them saying, run these line drills, stop, do layups. If you ain't being commanded in that capacity with a coach on the side telling them what to do, they out here making D-level moves, just like they would have did in school if they didn't help them with their books. Now, it's a couple athletes and ball players, but these dudes ain't balling like that. They ain't got it. They don't have the capacity from a mental standpoint. They ain't that smart. They ain't got it. They ain't got it.
Let me tell all you fancy-ass ball-playing Negroes something.
They need to be told. They ain't got it. They need to be told where to go. They need to be told how to move. That's why they make the mistakes, and that's why they end up where they at. So they was tall in the 8th grade. Everybody knew they wasn't a regular dude. But that wasn't meaning they was smart. So now they jumping online talking. Don't know that much. They don't have the intellectual capacity. They not sitting in a college classroom the same time everybody else sitting in there, because they got to go to practice. They got ball tournaments during the season. So anytime from October through March, they ain't even in classes on a regular basis. They got special hookups where they get their homework directly from the professors. The coaches send somebody to make arrangements to get their homework. They got a different level. So you do got a handful of very intelligent athletes who still do the work. They still getting helped. You get to be an athletic tutor, you have to have an A average. So they got the A average tutor. Other people can't even afford no tutor. They can't even get no help if they want to say, I want to get this class right here. They just had to hope for it. So they had the best of everything, which is fine, because they was the money makers for the university if it was Division I schooling. But now they jumping on these podcasts. They ain't that smart. They still coasting off the reputations they had when they was athletes and public figures. That's why society go. Every time you go in that grocery store, take notice these days in the last 4 years. When you go in that grocery store, you bought what you bought. When you come back and you buy that product again, you look like, wait a minute, did that go up 20 cents? Man, that was $2.49. Was it $2.69 when I bought it? Was that $2.79, or did they just raise that price and I didn't see it? Those are the everyday people's issues. They see the prices going up. If you want to keep it 100, you go in that store. Sometimes when you come back to that store, the price changed overnight. They don't change the price tags of the store when the customers is in there. Most of the time when they raise certain prices, they put that tag on the grocery item when ain't nobody in the store. So when you come back, you don't catch them putting prices and raising them, putting new labels on the product shelf. You didn't see, wait a minute, man, I was here yesterday, that price was different, but you ain't seen nobody change it. These is issues that these dudes don't got no clue on. That's why they about to lose. They talking and they getting on the internet and don't nobody resonate with the message they talking, because they supposed to be the elite of the group. You ain't balling no more. You ain't got no more hit songs. You ain't generating no paper no more. You just here. So now you trying to collect on the back end of a past career. You're not the current dude. So that's why we said there's 3 factors. Small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about events. Great minds talk about solutions to ideas. That's why we don't even want to mention them dudes, because that make us on the level that they can only be on when we got solutions. And we got one right for you with our people. Our people came up with something, empowerment for the people. Empowerment for the people is showing people how to start a business for free. They don't even got to pay. They go to the website, they read the website, and they move on. They go their direction. If they want to get it, and if they say, hold on now, I ain't get what y'all saying in detail, because, you know, there's details that explain everything. There's knowledge is infinite. So if they say, yeah, we want to know details, and we say, hey, my people got this book out, Unlock the Physical Fitness Expert Within You, 3 Easy Steps to Start a Digital Fitness Influencer Business and Change Your Life. That's the book, Unlock the Physical Fitness Expert Within You. It's $3 as an ebook. But the information is already free. But if you want some details and a few more examples and some references of where you get more information, and that's any area of business, but it shows the idea of what to do, because Charleston White dropped it. He said, man, most jobs, their purpose is to create workers. Not and at this time of survival, we ain't trying to hate on those who are in charge of business and industry, because we can call them pimps and hoes. If they pimping, we ain't going to speak on your pimping. We going to let you pimp on. If this whole race of people is your slave, we going to let you be the slave master. We ain't going to interrupt. They got to go to the library and read the book and free themselves. That was the problem with leaders like Malcolm X. You go against the script, but these ain't your Negroes. They belong to us. That's a war power move. So the point is, you read the books, you educate. We got free library system in this country. So it really can't be no criticism of the status quo without one knowing how to implement ideas to make everybody benefit. Them dudes ain't got that kind of mind. They too far from that. But these are the ones we hear. So don't come to the digital space and be trying to kick it like you got something coming. You've already been shunned by the major powers. That's why you was on NBC when you was playing ball. But now you ain't playing ball. So you don't get the center court status no more. So don't come here. When you come here, you one step away from the street. And street don't mean negativity. It just mean unregulated. It mean unbiased, uncensored. You can't touch that because you've been coddled and carried because of the value you brought, whatever college, university, or professional sport team that you worked for. As an athlete, as a celebrity, whatever management company that you made money for, when you were managed by those top 3 that one must be affiliated with, it was all a system. But while they was playing systematic patsy and toesy and footy in them hot rooms full of a bunch of greasy dudes, when everybody real wasn't even invited because they knew, oh no, they ain't them kind of cats. And on camera, these dudes was weirdos. And they was doing weird stuff that's been documented and acknowledged. So now they done fell behind. The country done fell behind. Yeah, they got a few dollars. But as far as a developing country is saying the one that grows, man, they done fell from number one. So if you go further than that, this is the thing where the brothers made another mistake after Stetson Sonic made the song AFRICA, released it in 1987. That was Tommy Boy Records. That song helped be a catalyst in changing South Africa. So some dudes from Brooklyn changed the whole world, and nobody don't even know it like that. Because it was that song. If you go back, go look at the video, look it up, listen to the song, and you will see what no Africans making no song about Africans like that. You had some brothers from in the United States. So that's how people are looked at in the United States, world leaders. Because they got freedom of expression, and they didn't push something out. And this is even Tommy Boy Records. Tommy Silverman. Say what you want about him in a negative sense. He did something good right there. He put that out. It wasn't that the funding didn't go to the people in Brooklyn, communities in Brooklyn that were starving. That went to Africa, the Africa Fund. That's where the royalties went. See, so you would never see, nothing like that with these current dudes who everybody want to uphold because they got some champagne in their hand and they on some luxury boat. You must be kidding me. You can do that too, but you are banned from doing anything real. You got your little non-profits that you can do because that's all part of a scheme to make you look like you positive, and they not. They ain't doing nothing on the positivity level, but it ain't their fault because they who they are. They not the real that they want to project themselves to be, and that's all right. Everybody can't be it, but they can all say it and talk about it and project that imagery. That's just what they do. It's a lot of actors in this country, and they acting. So the point is, when you went to, that was 1987, Free South Africa, that song. And they talked about the whole continent and the political influences that was hindering and stopping the country. So that couldn't keep being hip-hop. It had to turn into what you see now, buffoonery and coonery and a bunch of low-scale children who ain't paint. A lot of kids ate paint, got lead poisoning. They had to pick them type of kids. The ones who had medication as children to calm down, so they may have been good at writing some poetry, but they had to get people who wasn't that multidimensional. They wasn't multidimensional at all, or they could be controlled and paid for. And they just so no hate on that, but that's what they did. So when you come forward, something else changed. The world changed. You always hear these dudes talking about free such and such, free this one, free that one. Man, how you gonna say free a drug dealer, a dude who sold crack in your neighborhood, and you gonna use your national voice and platform to give them a shout out? We already know you slow. See, when ain't none of them never said free Mumia Abu Jamal. And I'm not even saying for Mumia Abu Jamal is someone to be freed as a revolutionary, because a revolutionary, former Black Panther, he's gonna take the fate he was given. Because he already knew that was the compact as being part of the Black Panther Party by that time when he got his conviction. They knew what it was. They knew who was who, and they knew what COINTELPRO was by that time. So they knew this. They knew that the gauntlet was gonna drop. They knew what was gonna happen. They knew punishment was on its way. But you ain't never heard none of them these dudes. They ain't even spoke to him. So this speaking of the drug dealer is the equivalent of speaking to a black revolutionary. They just in different directions, but they all considered negative. So when you came to Nelson Mandela was honored by the New York Yankees in 2014 with a plaque in his, recognition of who he was, because when Mandela was released from prison, and this was a CNN article from 2014, they said the late South African president visited the home of the New York Yankees in 1990, just 4 months after he was released from his 27-year incarceration, wearing a Yankees cap and a jacket. Wearing a Yankees cap and jacket, Mandela arrived at the stadium 24 years ago and announced to the assembled crowd, "You know who I am. I am a Yankee." And he was talking about a New York Yankee. So the point is, this article is from 2014. So you would have to add like another 10, 14 years to 10 years, 11 years to this article of me saying 24 years ago. That's like 34, 35 years ago or something like. So the point is, Mandela was collecting economics. People was donating to him. Everybody was from people that said that I know that said they was there. They went to the event and they was asking for donations, and whatever funds they collected from all over the world, they gave that to him. Do that sound familiar? You got dudes trying to throw concerts and benefits for drug dealers, and you mean to tell me in 1990 they would do something like that for a world leader? And now you've reduced your brain capacity to saying, well, let's make some funds available for this crack dude, this dude who sold crack, this dude who flooded the street with dope. We ain't putting dope dealers down. What we saying is what you show the world in public of how you look out. You prioritize someone who was a merchant of death. Now we in the street, so we know the dude in the street. We ain't putting the dude down in the street because the dude in the street might have bought everybody something to eat in the street when they seen you not getting in trouble. Oh, you go to school, give him whatever he want. I got your food. So we not saying that they was terrible people, but that's not the optics that's supposed to be done in public. You don't recognize him in front of the world and make an announcement. Yeah, shout out to such and such, and he was a drug dealer, a crack dealer. You showing you accept that to other people around the world. Instead of there's a voice of someone positive you could have mentioned in that moment of where you had a moment to speak. You ain't did nothing for nobody who develops communities, because these dudes that rap, these so-called entertainers, they want to be the face of everything. They wasn't never the fly dude. 99% of them was not that dude. You might have been, you got a little crack money, a few vials in your sock, but you wasn't no ultimate macaroni. You wasn't no player. You wasn't even close. You wasn't close in the status of street politics. You wasn't close. You was somebody who was a troublemaker, starting fights, shooting for no reason when we trying to be up in here macking on these shorties. You wasn't that. And then you just might can rhyme. Maybe you got some time in the county and was able to get your pen game right and wrote some rhymes while you was locked down. Or since you dropped out anyway, while you on the corner, you formulating some raps. Great. And everybody couldn't do it, so you did it. But as far as being a respected figure, rap wasn't the dude. It was the dude before rap that they saw coming up. That's all that was, because, hip-hop went from narratives. It was narratives. You told a story, and then dudes adopted characterization. They became the story. It wasn't them. That's why a lot of jealous street dudes used to say, he rapping my life. No, he rapping a character. Just like a movie. He can do that, but when dudes started adopting a personification of a character and then they became the character, they started getting problems. And then that's why I said they fell off anyway, because they had limited knowledge of self, where they could exercise beyond what they had remembered and could parrot, because something they heard. They knew 120. They knew that because they remembered it. But could they really break it down? No. They couldn't, because you could see where they at now, similar to where they was 20 years ago. That's why you hear all these rappers talking about something that happened in 2004, 94. They still talking them old stories. Sound like the difference between the young and the old is how fast the old dudes start talking about way back in when I was a man and 24 years old. They saying the same thing. Your common rapper is only talking old stories. Yeah, man, I remember when the homie. Now wait till they get old. They gonna be saying the same thing. When they get 60, they still gonna be talking that same stuff they talking now. Old stories. No solutions to the inner cities and how to solve no problems, because they don't got that mental capacity. You got on at a time people was putting you on. You happen to live in the same building as somebody and they gave you a shot, and here you are, limited in capacity and intellectual ability. You a bully and like to fight your own people, because that come from some negativity that was implanted in you when you was a child to keep your whole neighborhood down. You was part of the plan to destroy yourself. So we don't want to talk about that in that way, because if you're talking about implementation, that's why we said when you had the unlock the physical fitness expert within you, and we gave the blueprint. This is one way of how you get on. If you having hard times, you got a little job, but be ready to get your own going, because you're only going to be able to depend on yourself in these harsh economic realities of today. Be able to break that down, be able to speak around the world, be able to research. Don't keep listening to these dudes talking about when they were selling no crack or rapping back 25 years ago. That's not going to help right now. Those are stories that's going to keep them up in the upper echelons of folklore and that's folk tales. They ain't talking about something but some old stuff. That might as well be some Dolomite era stuff. That sounds super old. And it ain't got no principles of eternity connected to it. Ain't no timelessness in them stories, because them dudes still trying to eat so they can keep getting bigger things. And they ain't really built like that. They just got that elitist mindset where they want to be over a certain group because they was taught to be in them positions of what a slave master embodies. They many slave masters, because they the house Negro of the slave master mindset. It ain't the slavery itself, it's the mindset and the philosophy that they have to adhere to in order to stay on point. And that's what the internet really don't open to. They try to make it commercialized, but the internet ain't completely colonized like the regular media, the traditional media where they come from. You be disappointed when you meet some of these dudes, because they don't be nowhere near what you thought the character was. Nothing be real about them. But the camera come on and everyone was guilty of it. Even Muhammad Ali turned into a character when the camera came on. And he apologized for stuff he said about Joe Frazier back in the 70s. He said, I'm apologize, but he at least knew the concept of characterization and entertainment. He learned that, which made him the biggest. There is only one greatest of all time. It's greatest of all time. It's one. These others ain't greats. They all right. He was greater and transcended boxing. So that's a whole nother conversation. But they wasn't even close to what Muhammad Ali was. And we won't say why, because that's $1 million story. That's $1 million story. And that ain't even a lot. So ain't nobody giving out no real game, because they ain't said what Charleston White said about the international view and what these brothers like Stetson Sonic did. Those are global moves. These dudes ain't did nothing. These kids can't even watch their own kids. They babies mentally. And they swear they woofing like they big mentally. They not. What course have you taken? What books have you read? We can see through your conversation. You penitentiary based and street based on crack. Now, one more point. We really got to get to this because we don't want to stay. We got to go. It's almost an hour that we've been here. So, the brothers in the street, the people in the U.S., as they glorify these so-called drug dealers, they have no concept of gross domestic product, measuring an economy of a country. They don't know nothing about what that means. They don't know what it means to see what are your expenditures in export and what are your imports for that country to determine if your country is at a surplus or a deficit. The GNP, the gross national product, that's defined as the total market value of all final goods and services. You start talking like this, brothers get confused, headache, and they blank out, their eyes roll in the back of their head. Oh, I'm lost. But the point is, what I'm saying, when you talk about drugs, yeah, these dudes don't know nothing about no drugs, man. They small in the game, but when you talk about the countries and you talk about what they produce, and you go to these so-called countries where these drugs come from, the biggest thing they got is coffee. This is a whole nother show. They got some bananas or something. They got some flowers. Go look at what they export. They big there. But when it come to the U.S., we ain't got no cocaine to boost us up. We ain't got it. By the time these dudes get some drugs, it's lightweight. It ain't no metric tons. It's small quantities, and they bragging about the little bitty weight they had. But when you look at what moved throughout the world, it was tons. And these dudes ain't nothing near that. But they should just be quiet. You probably didn't save enough cash. You didn't know how to put it nowhere because you was part of a setup in the first place. And you have to ask.
You know something about cocaine?
They don't know nothing, man. They just talking. And if they really know, they ain't supposed to say they know. So the point is, based on that GNP, that product they was moving with, it's low level. And they put them in the front because they bullies, and they used to shoot at their own people, kill their own people, to terrorize their neighborhood, whether it was so-called crack dudes, whether it was these so-called gang dudes. They ain't never brought no heat to nobody but the people in their own neighborhood, which makes them historically weak. You weak historically because of how you rolled on your own. You weak according to the ancestral record of what you were supposed to do. And I'm talking about the player record, not even formal, just what players do. You ain't nowhere near, and that's what made them the player hater. Hater, when we say you a hater, that's a player hater, and these dudes ain't never met a player. They just seen him leaving their house because they didn't even know that layer of existence. They got the crack side, which was the low side. They didn't even know about no real. They talking. They ain't supposed to be seeing nothing. So, anyway, this is the Online Time Fame podcast. These dudes got this online time fame and didn't know to transition it away from the digital world. Go back to the traditional world if you could get there. You might not be on TV. Take it back to the street. That's what Charleston White taught. That's what he was able to do. Get offline. Get your products rolling. He's teaching that. So that's what makes him a giant right now. Not because he's the new popular thing. What can you do? That's what can you bring? That's why we said, well, go look at these notes right here at empowermentforthepeople.com. Go look at Empowerment for the People and look at that book and see, maybe I could take some points from that information, and I don't even got to buy the book. That's power right there. Unlock the physical fitness expert within you. That's something you can do on your own. Go work out. Get your push-ups right. Get away from that drug. Get away from that alcohol. Try to eat the best you can eat. Go back to how a country-fed mentality. Go eat them basic foods that's not processed because it's cheap and inexpensive. So you're going to eat them beans. You're going to eat that rice. You're going to get back strong, and you're going to get on yours. That's what it is. That's the message you ain't hearing these dudes talk about. That's what you ain't gonna get, because they ain't been paid to tell you that yet. And with that being said, this is JD. This is the Online Time Fame podcast. And from that, I'm going to say,